There's no thunder, Amy. There's rain enough to fill everyone's bucket.
You're like my life coach today.
Yeah, a rising tide lifts all boats.
How do you have all these like at the ready?
I'm a mother.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Story District Presents, a podcast for people who love live storytelling. I'm Amy Saidman, your host and director of Story District. Story District has been putting on live shows, coaching, and teaching the art of storytelling in Washington, D.C. since 1997. Each week on the podcast, we bring you a story told on the Story District stage, and then you'll get a chance to meet the storyteller. Today's guest with a story about the birds and the bees is Cara Foran. Tell us who you are, what your sign is, and where you were born.
My name is Cara Foran. I'm an Aries, clearly, and I grew up in Ohio, but I left soon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cara performed the story you're about to hear at Story District's Top Shelf, our annual showcase of the best stories of the year. Enjoy the story and stick around for our conversation with Cara afterward.
Thank you. So, I'm from a big family, and I always thought that I myself would have 5 children, specifically a girl, a boy, identical twin girls, and then like a wild card. But as we've all learned in the past year, life doesn't always go the way we plan. And so, as it happened, no one ever asked me to marry them, and no one accidentally impregnated me. And I turned 40, and I thought, well, I guess I missed that boat. I mean, that version does skip over a lot of awkward first dates and traumatic breakups and betrayal and hours and hours and hours of therapy. But that's basically it. I was single and 40 and childless and not very happy about it. But as it happens, life also throws you some curveballs sometimes. And so it came to be that there was a child in my extended family who needed a place to go. And there I was with an empty womb and an empty bedroom. And the next thing you know, I'm raising a 5-year-old girl. Well, like all of you, I'm in DC because I like to be really, really good at things. And that definitely, right? And that definitely extends to parenting. My kid is the best kid in the entire world. And as a result, I wanted to be the best parent ever to her. I wanted to win. And I wanted her to have all the things that I didn't have, right? Like, for instance, I didn't know about feminism or sushi until college. But I wanted her to grow up with a healthy dose of both. So we started out easy with like gender-neutral toys and California rolls, but when she got into first grade, I knew I was gonna have to elevate my game because that's when kids start learning from their peers, and I knew she was gonna have questions about the birds and the bees, and I wanted to be ready. Now, when I asked my mother where babies come from, she was folding laundry, it was approximately 1980, and she never looked at me, never missed a beat. She just said, well, when a man loves a woman, God plants a seed while they're sleeping. Number one, that is not true. Number 2, they will kick you right out of Feminist Parenting Club if you tell your child that in 2018. So I decided to go back to my original source material, which is a book that my best friend Erin owns, and I was obsessed with it. I must have read it hundreds of times. It's called Where Did I Come From? And it features graphic, very graphic, anatomically correct cartoon people speaking very frankly about sex and babies. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna order this book, I'm gonna read it to make sure it's still good by modern standards, and when my kid asks me about the birds and the bees, I'm gonna pull it out all breezy and casual, and I'm gonna win. But what actually happened is that we got home late on a Friday night, and my porch was covered with Amazon Prime boxes, and she opened them all, and she found the book, and she insisted that I read it to her right then. Okay. A few things about Where Did I Come From? Number 1, it's written by Peter Mayle, who died this week, which makes my story a little more unfortunate, but go with it. He went on to write A Year in Provence, which is just a really weird career trajectory for him. Number 2, the book has a lot more words than I remember, like way more, blocks and blocks of text on every page, and my early little reader insisted that I read each and every one. Number 3, those words included hard, stiff, and spurt, which I was not ready for, may never have been ready for. And it also included the word titties as an acceptable synonym for breasts, which, I'm sorry, Peter Mayle, I know this book was published in 1973, but you cannot tell me that was ever acceptable. I don't believe it. Number 4, the book was pretty good on consent, but not perfect, so I had to do a lot of ad-libbing on the fly. Like, for instance, where the book said, when a man loves a woman, he kisses her. I said, when a man loves a woman, he kisses her, provided she consents enthusiastically because they're in an equal partnership where all of her needs are being met and she has the agency to make that decision. And if anyone ever kisses you when you don't want them to, I will break their face, whether it's your boss or your boyfriend or the fucking president. Resist, y'all. And number 5, the book goes to great pains to explain that it's people who are in love that have sex, which frankly has not been my adult experience. But I figured we'd cover that when she went to college. So anyway, we're getting through the book, page by painful page, and she's got a lot of questions, but they can basically be summed up as, but how? How? How does that do that? And I would just say, very patiently, these are good questions, honey. Let's go read that page again. Let's look at the picture. And we're getting toward the end, and I can feel that my release is imminent, if you know what I'm saying. And she kind of like stiffens up and squirms away from me, and she goes, I do have one more question, but that's really weird, and you're not gonna like it. And I was like, this is my moment. I'm gonna win this so hard. I was like, I put on that voice I would use if I were like meeting Terry Gross for tea at the co-op. You know that NPR voice? And I took her hands and I looked into her eyes and I said, honey, there are no weird questions. I'm your person, I'm here for you. You can ask me anything. And she goes, okay, well, have you ever done it? And I was like, well, you know, we're a modern family, so I can't really fall back on, well, yes, Daddy and I love each other, and I fell asleep and God planted a seed, and that's fucking creepy anyway. But, so I said, you know, I'm gonna tell her what I believe Simone de Beauvoir would have told her child, which is, yes, I've done it. And she said, well, what about Aunt Bree? What about Aunt Erin? What about my teacher? What about Nana? And I said, you know what? Why don't you just assume that all the adults you know have done it? Now, it is really late, and we have got to go to bed. And she goes, well, who? Who did you do it with? Do I know him? And I was like, you know, that is not really appropriate. And she goes, and when? When's the last time you did it? And I was like, listen, I am a single parent with a demanding career and meaningful hobbies, and it's been a little while, okay? God. No, I didn't say that. I said, sweetie, that's something grown-ups only talk about with other grown-ups. Now, it's really late, and we've got to go to bed. So we go upstairs, and she brushes her little teeth, and she puts on these Hello Kitty pajamas, and we get in bed, and I'm rubbing her back, and I think she's just about gone. And she goes, Mommy? And I said, yes, my love. And she said, so now I understand how a boy and a girl make a baby, but how do 2 girls do it? And I said, go to sleep, and I'll tell you tomorrow.
All right. Well, I'm so glad to have you today. I'm really glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
To do this conversation, but also I absolutely love this story about you and Avery. What I'm curious about, so you go from, okay, I'm just taking care of a child, to, oh, no. I want this child to be my child. And then you have to go through all these hoops and wait and wonder, and then you get to be a mom. And that's just such an emotional journey. I'd love for you to speak about it a little.
So Avery came to live with me when she was 5. She'd been living with my mom for a couple years, and we thought that was on a short-term basis. It became clear it wasn't. And I'd always wanted kids, but always frankly been really biased towards having like my own biological baby. I really wanted like a little Cara, which is interesting because it's so clear to me now that I have her that this is better. Like, I'm so in awe of her and appreciative of her, and she doesn't push my, I mean, we have our moments, but I feel like a little mini Cara would push my buttons in ways that she just, she doesn't, you know? We're not built exactly the same. She's not like a little neurotic bookworm like I was. She's this super extroverted, super happy, and she makes me more extroverted and happy. So yeah, so she moved in with me when she was 5, and we started the adoption proceedings, and man, it is stressful. I tried to shield her from it. I tried to make make her think from the beginning that she was just going to live with me forever. And so I tried to keep it very like low emotional stakes for her, the whole adoption thing.
Yeah.
But it's funny how much things changed the minute the adoption was final. Like,
so what changed? No, tangibly.
I'll tell you the first thing I noticed. So Avery had been in this great close-knit school, and we'd been in the same class for 2 years. And the kids knew. They always have questions. Like, she used to call me Aunt Cara, so it was, why do you live with your aunt? Like, what, where's your mom? And so we thought it'd be good for Avery and for them to, like, tell them what had gone down. So I went to my spiel, which I tried to keep on a first grade level. I was like, you guys all know I'm Avery's aunt. She's been living with me, and we love each other very much. And today we finalized her adoption. And what that means is now Avery has 2 moms, the mom whose belly she grew in and me that she gets to live with. And those kids went nuts. Like, I really thought it wouldn't. I mean, how could it matter to them? Like, how? But man, kids really want other kids to have moms. I mean, they were
Did
like,
they applaud?
oh my God, they like gasped and applauded. Like 2 moms in the back of the room burst into tears. I was like, you guys, you're going to kill me. Like, the last thing you want to do, talk about no crying in storytelling. No crying when storytelling to a class of first graders, for God's sake, Cara, like pull it together. And it made me really realize that kids are not, I mean, I knew it already, but it brought home to me how deeply they think about things, And then, of course, for us personally, it was not long after that she decided she wanted to call me mom.
Yeah, is there a story about that? I think
I tried to soft pedal it with her as much as I could. She's had so much change and whatever. I never wanted her to feel pressured, but I let her know that she could call me mom if she wanted to. And she was always like, no, I'm good. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then one day she was like, I've decided I want to call you a mom name all the time. And I was like, okay. And it was about a year ago. And it was like she'd been holding it back behind a dam, because now she has like 100 mom names for me, and she says them all like 1,000 times a day. I wake up, it's like mom, mommy, mama, mama, mom, mom, mommy, mommy, mama, 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 mom, like over and over. Like she's been like holding them back, which obviously I like quite a bit.
Yeah, I love a mom name. I feel like that's going to be the title of your memoir.
Mom name, I know.
So I wanted to revisit the comment you made about there's no crying in storytelling. What did that mean to you? And what does it mean to you now?
Well, I know it's a good rule. I think I always credit it to Kevin Boggs. I think that's who I heard it from first. And I actually, interestingly enough, was thinking about it a lot this week, because I heard this other podcast where they were talking about storytelling, and somebody quoted, I wish I could remember who it was, but she said she tells her students, you tell stories from your scars, but not your wounds.
Oh, that's good.
Isn't that great?
That is good.
Because if something is still so raw that you can't talk about it without breaking down, then you're not quite ready to tell a story about it yet. Like, you need to have enough distance from it so that you can shape the narrative and get through it. And also, to take it to like the craft level, it's a courtesy to your audience. Whatever happens in your story, it's your responsibility as a person with the mic to let your audience know that you're okay. You're going to come out of it intact, because otherwise it's such an uncomfortable listening experience that, That is so well put. I will add one other thing that is part of this rule for us, is that it can be manipulative as well. And some people can lean on that, but we don't want that. Those are the stories I think people gravitate towards sometimes as new storytellers, because you do want to tell stories that you have a rich emotional connection to and that you have a lot of feelings about. That's a vein to tap into for telling a great story. And that doesn't mean you can't become emotional. I've heard plenty of storytellers' voices get a little bit tight or shaky or whatever, and they keep going, and that's okay. I mean, it's just if you literally cannot tell it without being overcome, then you shouldn't be doing it.
So let's talk more about you as a storyteller. How did you get started telling stories? Why did you tell your first story?
So I had a blog. Remember blogs? They were websites that people wrote
With
personal
words?
stories on them. Yeah. It was called Hilarity in Shoes, and I was really into it. And it was starting to like do well, whatever that means, when you're spending a lot of time on a project that no one knows is yours because it was anonymous and you don't make any money on. And then I got a new job where I knew I was not going to have time to think about anything but this job for a while. And at the same time, I was going through a really horrific breakup, which I talked about. That's my
Sucker for Love.
My Sucker for Love story. And so I started this new job, and I was like, okay, I've got to do something besides work, because it was a really hard job, and I was like sad. And so I was like, I got to have something else. And I had been to a couple Story District shows, and I was like blown away. And I remember thinking, like, that little voice, I was like, no, I could do that. I looked and they had a class starting soon. And literally from the minute I got there, my first class, I couldn't believe I'd lived in DC my whole life, or, for 20 years and not done that before. Like, it's just opened the city up for me in a way that I can't imagine what I was doing before that. I'm not being very eloquent about that, but that class changed my life more than almost anything else I've ever done. It just opened up this door to like a whole world that obviously I love, and I've become, it's become a big part of me, and I've become a part of it.
Since that first Story District class, Cara has been a regular host on The Moth in DC and co-hosts a monthly storytelling show called Perfect Liars Club. Now, in that show, there are 4 stories. 3 are true and 1 is a lie. And it's the audience's job to figure it out after they've had a chance to interrogate all the storytellers. Definitely check it out. Before we let any of our guests go, we like to ask them what they're watching or following in the storytelling universe and what they would recommend to our listeners.
This Stories in Session podcast with David Crabb, who is another Moth host and an author of a book called Bad Kid and just a really cool person. He's a story geek like a lot of us, and it's a great podcast. He interviews a lot of really interesting storytellers. I just listened to the one he did with Catherine Burns, the creative director at The Moth. That's where I got that quote from.
Oh, okay.
Mark Pagan has a really interesting podcast called Other Men Need Help. It's about masculinity and how to be masculine without being a toxic man. It's great. I mean, that makes it sound like it's kind of preachy and heavy, but it's just storytelling. It's very interesting.
That's cool. All right, where can people find you?
You can find me at Perfect Liars Club the first Wednesday of every month at the Bear Baron. I'm on Instagram at Cara Foran. And we also have a podcast on Goat Rodeo Network called Perfect Liars Club, where we broadcast some of our shows, and there should be those drop occasionally.
Y'all should follow Cara on Facebook, because if you're ever feeling down, then you can be lifted up by some of the posts. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I feel like Story District is my storytelling home, so I'm always happy to do anything for you guys.
We're lucky. That's it for this episode of Story District Presents. Earlier in the show, Cara mentioned Kevin Boggs, who said there's no crying in storytelling. Kevin was an essential part of the storytelling community, a longtime Story District teacher, an extraordinary storyteller, and a very close friend of mine. He died of cancer in 2015, and we miss him all the time. Thank you so much for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, and most importantly, keep listening. We have so much good stuff coming up, including that story Cara mentioned about the breakup she was going through when she took her first storytelling class. Visit our website, storydistrict.org, to find pictures and links related to this episode. And while you're there, get tickets to one of our live shows, pitch a story of your own, sign up for a class, or hire our fantastic consulting team for your business or organization. Our show is produced by Lizzie Peabody, Ronald Young Jr., Alana Nevins, Nick Hill, Tim St. Clair, and Jackson Bierfeld. Special thanks to the lovely Cara Foran for joining us in the studio this week. I'm Amy Saidman, and this is Story District Presents. We'll see you next time. So I feel like the luckiest person ever because I'm so excited I get to sit here and ask you questions.
Okay.
So thank you for coming in. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Avery. Yes.
How old are you?
I'm 8.
Do you think your mother is funny?
Kind of.
Are you funny?
No.
Oh, okay.
Avery, you tell me all the time that you're funnier than me. Tell me a dinosaur joke.
Why can't dinosaurs clap their hands?
Because they have dino paws?
Because they're dead.
You got me. You got me. I feel like a sucker right now.
What's your favorite part about storytelling stuff in DC?
Getting to meet new babysitters.
Getting to meet new babysitters, that's a good one.
Are all her babysitters story
Some of them, hey, Amy, it's a patchwork. It takes a village. This is my village. So speaking of, what are you doing on July 18th?